That
All
was a
right.
fucking song and a dance, huh? To get that figured out.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. Already got my friend Ian on here. He wants to talk about Bitcoin
So,
and the aspects of that are yet to be, you know, uncovered or
yeah, realized.
realized. I don't even understand it. Like,
So
I just
have you heard of it outside of from what I
no.
told you of it?
Like, no, you're the only person that's really like filled me in on any of the details. It seems like kind of like it's something that would that would make sense that would happen. Like somebody would along the line would cut in and be like, oh, let's make our own currency, and
Yeah.
it makes total sense that it's there. I just never picked up on it or like never came to my attention until then.
Yeah, it's actually
That's a good thing though. That proves that it's really working and it's really outside of the you know
yeah, it's actually old, not old, but it's a well-known idea, and it seems like you understand the concept behind it, and a lot of people just think it's like a novelty. But
right, but
back
still
in back in the early '90s, with kind of like the cyberpunk and what was known as the cypherpunks, there was
steampunks, hackers and stuff.
yeah, hackers and all them. There was
That's
a group
freaking
called
cool.
the cypherpunks, and they were actually like up against the government because the government was trying to keep cryptography out of the hands of the public.
So they're like radical what's the word? They're sort of like what the fuck am I trying to say? Like they rebelled against the
Yeah, against like
establishment kind of thing.
government encryption and secrecy. Well, they thought everyone should be able to have access to this
Yeah,
cryptography technology, which is essentially hiding information. Like, for example, in World War II, they used
like neurolinguistic type stuff. Like
yeah,
they
even
thought that
that.
those same techniques should be allowed to be used by everybody, and they thought it should be more
Yeah, it should be freely
available.
available,
Yeah,
and so the government actually wanted to keep cryptography out of the hands of the public because it allows for secure and secret um, communication. So, like, I could send you an email that's encrypted, and no one can read it outside of you.
yeah. Like only I could read it, like based on whatever it said, the language, like the way it's typed and stuff.
No, just the fact that there's a computer algorithm that is completely mathematical that
Oh yeah, like your
only
IP
works
address
with
or
like
something.
they're like keys, and if I have one key and you have the other key, no one else could read it because it's a way of mixing these two keys like as if they're colors.
Yeah,
So if you choose a color and I choose a color, we both mix the color, and you can only read it if you have that mixture of color.
uh, and then
So
you pass
it's
on
kind of
information.
hard to understand. I don't completely understand it myself. I just know the concept and how it works, and it's pretty much like a language that only the people using it can understand.
Indeed.
But anyone can also use it.
I don't understand the implications of it, but I think so. You're basically let's narrow it down a little more. You're saying that this encryption type coding or type language is sort of surrounding the whole Bitcoin thing. It's sort of like
Yeah, that's
involved
what's
in.
making it. That's what gives it its strength and its value is instead of having like humans and a central bank dictating, all right, this money exists here and this money exists there, and this is how we're going to keep control of it. You have the cryptography in that role instead,
Right.
and the cryptography is mathematics, and it's all based. So in a sense, it can't be corrupted because it's all computer language and mathematics.
Right,
So
and
you
the
can't
language
go
can't
in.
be changed because its language is just
Yeah,
universal. It's
it's
not something
decided
that.
by computer programs. Computer programs are written very specifically to follow these rules,
And also
cryptography and mathematics. And that's what
currency.
Bitcoin is built around.
Yeah.
And so when people say, well, what value does Bitcoin have? Its value is that it's not being regulated by humans. It's being regulated by mathematics.
And
So you
mathematics
can't,
is something that will always be
yeah, it'll
of.
always be true.
Yeah.
You can't. There's no greed in mathematics. There's no. You can't change the
There's no inside value or what's the word, special interest in
exactly.
mathematics. Mathematics doesn't have the ego.
Exactly.
Mathematics I get what you're saying.
And so the advent of the computer allowed us to create these super complicated algorithms of, mathematics that, humans can't decrypt it. Humans couldn't solve it if we had a million years to work out the numbers. It's just that computers are better at crunching numbers than humans are,
Yeah,
So,
faster at least.
yeah, definitely faster. So that's kind of the basis of what Bitcoin is built on and why it's so popular. It's because it can't be influenced by, centralized authorities or anything like that.
Well, it seems to give value to itself, so I'm trying to think if it gives value to itself and people convert that to monetary value, they trade it in. The only it's only operating within the paradigm and within the medium of Bitcoin. So anything outside of that market it's almost like its own. So you have to keep track. You probably would have to keep track of all of the history, right? Like that's what you said before, because you look at like government documents or like a currency for like how to value a currency. It's all like language and like semantics and all that crap. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
but it's always changing. But you're saying that the Bitcoin stays the same, so that
Yeah,
its
the
value
principles
can't
stay the same.
and it can't
like
inflate
even,
and it can't devalue or anything like the market state like the so like say you did like a stock type thing like people investing using Bitcoin, it wouldn't change like well it wouldn't that would be pointless anyway. It's just
well, the value
different.
changes based on people's belief in it, just like any other thing. But the
Well,
value
yeah.
doesn't change based on people's manipulation of the actual software. It only changes based on people's like trust
Preferences.
in it, belief in it.
Right.
So with the central bank, you have two elements. You have the people's trust in it, and also the bankers' manipulation.
Yeah.
And with Bitcoin, you have the people's trust in it, and that's it. And the principle remains the same, which is mathematics, cryptography, and decentralization.
That's
Another
pretty,
big thing about Bitcoin is, it's like, are you familiar with BitTorrent?
yes. I use uTorrent, but I still
Yeah,
understand the
same
principle
concept.
about
So it's very similar to BitTorrent in the fact that each person using it is kind of a node in the network.
hmm
And so you can't shut down any main BitTorrent server. That's why they can't get rid of BitTorrent, because each person using it is its own kind of node in the network.
right.
And so Bitcoin works the same way. Anyone who's using it is their own node in the network, and they're
Yeah, it seems like it'd be a cool thing to be in on, but not something that anyone could pick up, I think, in a short amount of time or educate themselves. It seems, I mean, in that way it's fleeting, but it does seem like a very novel. Well, in my opinion, I think it seems like a novel thing, but
first it is. At first it is, yeah. 'Cause so the concept is really new.
so it's an
But there are
adjustment
ways
of
to-
the thought process to
Sometimes I think of it as more of a technology rather than just a currency. Because it's
Yeah.
kind of something that,
it's definitely advanced.
yeah, it's a technology in itself, just like email was a technology within the internet.
Yeah.
And so like Bitcoin would be another technology within the internet that the internet is kind of like the mass like network that connects everything, and then you create these technologies within it that allow you to transfer money and transfer wealth without going through any kind of central medium or anything like that.
True. What was I gonna say? I'm trying to think. Like
Just ask me questions about it, because that's the best way to understand it. Is
Yeah.
just ask questions.
That's what I'm
about
saying though. I'm trying to think of questions like, the strength and like as far as the Bitcoin will go, basically depends on the reliability of technology and internet. So
it. Yeah.
what I'm saying is, if
Bitcoin.
if the internet and technology is somehow weak or fallible in a certain state like or in a certain situation, couldn't that ruin the possibilities for Bitcoin, considering it works in that medium of technology and internet. So I'm saying like if somebody doesn't have access to internet, well, most everybody does these days because it's like in the libraries, it's public and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not subsidized at this point. It's still like a free thing, the internet. So I'm saying, as far as that goes, like, can Bitcoin still have value when there's no internet to supply um, its existence,
I
essentially?
see what you're saying.
See what I'm saying?
It's true that Bitcoin only exists digitally, so
Yeah.
if
So
for some reason the internet was completely cut off around the world, Bitcoin you wouldn't be able to use it.
well, how
Trust.
algorithmically could you maybe replicate Bitcoin in a physical domain? Because I mean, that's an interesting
It would be
idea,
really, really hard.
right?
It probably wouldn't be worth it. And
You'd need a lot of
if all internet
variables.
went out, then I think we would have bigger problems on our hand to worry about rather than money. But the good news is that even though the internet goes out, Bitcoin isn't gone. It's still
Right.
saved on each person's hard drive, each node. Just
Yeah.
like if internet went out, you still have BitTorrent that you downloaded. It's on your hard drive.
Yeah, and it's usually free. Like if you can torrent,
Yeah.
I got a free uTorrent. I can torrent most programs for free now, so that's a pretty
So when the internet went back
unanimous.
up, Bitcoin would just take off where it left.
Oh,
It still exists. It wouldn't be lost. It's just that you need internet to exchange it and to have trust in it and to keep it going. But then
Alright.
again, any banking system right now, if there was no internet, would completely crash.
yeah,
Because most of our money is digital nowadays, even though we carry some cash. Most of it is just digital.
yeah. I mean, we mostly pay debit and credit.
Exactly. And even so, the banks don't even have, if all the people who went to, Wells Fargo or Bank of America want to withdraw their money, they couldn't because
No.
most of it is in digits,
Yeah,
not in cash.
like I'm thinking as long as the language of law and like as long as the banks are affiliated with the lawmakers and it's all like
Yeah.
that, there's not going to be a way for currency to be valued based on a philanthropic scale for all people because everything is controlled by language, and if language is the controller, I mean, we gotta find a way
That's
to
really good
somehow
point.
we transfer like that that aspect of like the Bitcoin and it being technologically maintained. Somehow that ideology could be transferred into the human domain of existence, because biologically, like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. We got to find a point where does monetary currency gain its value? Is it through the markets? Is it through the
It's just
corporations?
I believe it's through its ability to allow for freedom.
Yeah,
And right now, Bitcoin allows for, insane amounts of freedom because
Yeah.
there's no one can take my Bitcoin. It's away from me.
you can't
Ever,
put like
unless
a
I give them the password. But,
yeah.
Or they shut down the internet. And even then, if they shut down the internet, they haven't taken my Bitcoins. They've just
But that's a whole nother story. The hacker.
created a stall in the
Yeah.
system. But
Yeah.
it's interesting that you say it's all language because it is. Law is language. Government, it's all language. And
Well, it's ideology transferred to language, and that ideology is just a denseness of
Yep.
a personal preference to some kind. I don't know. It's all just we just gotta somehow loosen the ties over.
Well, yeah, the best solution is just to not participate in
Yeah.
their ideology.
Exactly. The more you
That's
ignore
what
it,
the cypherpunks and the hackers are all about. They're about creating their own not even creating their own ideology, just creating a space where you're free to do whatever you want. That's why Anonymous got so big, because that's their belief structure. Is it doesn't matter what you believe, doesn't matter about any of that.
we can all do our own thing
Yeah,
at this
as
point
long as
anyway.
you're not
With
imposing
the
it on
tools we
anyone.
have.
You're fine.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who I am, or why don't you want there to be cameras on the street corner if you're not doing anything bad, or why don't you want a database if you're not doing anything bad? It's not the point if I'm not doing anything bad or not. It's the point that
It's a belief system. It's like
why are you
expansion
going
of-
out of your way to watch me, to
Right.
stop me, to
getting
harass
ahead
me?
getting ahead of the curve, basically.
Yeah.
But,
So
I don't think most people can get ahead of that. I mean, there's some block in the language that's keeping people, or not language, just there's something that's keeping people from, it's drawing people towards a state of paralysis and like self-degradation.
People feel dependent. They've kind of made it seem like humans aren't capable of amazing things. Like, oh, you gotta wear your seatbelt. They make all these arbitrary
Notions.
legislations that they'll pull you over and give you a ticket for, even though you haven't hurt anyone.
Yeah.
So if I go right on red, or go, coast through a stop sign, I haven't hurt anyone, but I've broken one of their arbitrary legalities.
Yeah.
So they're literally gonna harass me. And
yeah,
if I
but
don't
you got to
listen
think
to
of
them,
the concept
they'll
that.
physically assault me.
Yeah, but if you ran through that stop sign, it's just the notion of like that's a possibility that could have hurt somebody. But then you think prior to that, if you have the mechanical skills and the what am I trying to say, motor skills to be able to navigate through a stop sign and have the observation to not hit anybody prior to their law of telling you have to stop. It's just like it's like a prenotated.
Pre-crime is what it is. Yeah.
Like they create the crime before it even happens, so that you'll be tricked into doing it.
Exactly, and if you don't follow it, then they literally will
go out of their way to fuck with you. Yeah, they just fuck with you and say, "What's wrong? What's your problem, man?"
Or no, they will physically assault me. Like if I don't stop for a cop, I'll be physically abused and assaulted for not, even though I haven't done anything wrong. I've just broken this arbitrary pre-crime that they've created, which is really just revenue gathering. Because you go to court, and this is something everyone should know, because I use it all the time if I ever get one of these arbitrary tickets. You go to court, you request a date, you plead not guilty, and you go to court and you say, is there any empirical evidence of the claim that's being made here? And there's not. The only person there is the officer, and his testimony isn't valid because he's the one who wrote the citation.
Right. So he's contradicting. He's got to have his own.
He has to have empirical evidence beyond a reasonable doubt.
Empirical evidence in his own paradigm that matches yours. It's too complicated. But I think that's really insightful, and I think that's a lot of good points there. So.
And the judge will dismiss your case every time unless the cop has either video or a picture of your face and you physically doing what, supposedly what they said.
So what central notion can we come to, or what more so, what essentially is the point that we're coming to here that we should try to move closer to in finding the answers to these problems? Because I think it's closer than we think. And
yeah, definitely.
What's the main thesis of our argument here?
I'd say just
non-regulation.
Non-participation. Just don't participate in their ideology,
Personalization.
If you use Bitcoin, you're not supporting the financial structures of the government.
You're just supporting mathematics, but if you support yourself in mathematics, it's a whole different story in that regard.
Yeah, and like Bitcoin, the software is not, using your Bitcoins to go invest or use it for $1 trillion defense budget or
the
anything
deficit,
like that.
whatever. Like people throw it like all the rich people, all the trickle down money that they don't use for other stuff. They put it all together, and that becomes the deficit, and then they spend that on crap that we have to spend. So their money recycles back to them, usually in the main. Like I was thinking.
The debt is created through the war, the defense budget, which is $1 trillion, in which our debt is $1 trillion,
and it keeps getting worse. And meanwhile, the language in these documents that try to get people's money, like transferring money to a company or private equity or whatever, is so complex that it ends up they're taking interest off of somebody else, and they pocket your money so that when they spend the money, they give you back whatever money is the return. It's like they're borrowing that money from somebody else on interest, enhancing the debt. It's a consistent.
Exactly. Like for example, if you go into a bank and request a loan, your loan application is not to get money from the bank. It's for the bank to create money